Welcome back. Welcome back to the SUBTOPICS podcast with your host, the one and only Jade. We are back with episode 2, and I was supposed to record this episode 2 days ago. A lot happened in those 2 days. I ended up not recording, technical difficulties, but we're back and we made it happen. So I was originally supposed to get on here. I have my iPad for notesies, by the way. Just in case if you're watching the video, you're like, what is she looking at? It's my iPad. My brain is very forgetful, so we do what we got to do. I was originally planning to get on here and talk about my pregnancy in some way, shape, or form. Like my labor experience, my pregnancy experience. And I think that I'll still talk about that a little bit. It might come up. It will probably come up. It's a big part of my life and the reason why a lot of the way that I am and things in my life are the way that they are. But before we jump into anything, let's just do our highs and lows of the day, week, whatever it is. It was a segment that I had on the first season, and it's something I really want to continue into this season because I think it's really important to just kind of check in, check in with yourself, check in with others, and see where we're at, feel out the vibe. The low for me this week is that it is my last week of vacation. I go back to work tonight. Like I said on my last episode, I work 8 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. And I was off for 20 days. Half of that I was sick, so I had to call out. But the other half was actually like a scheduled vacation. And I am dreading going back tonight. Like, I'm so sad and definitely not in any way, shape, or form ready to go back. The high of my week is that my son is so much more vocal and he's getting so much smarter. He's getting so much better at walking, like balancing himself. He doesn't fall as much. And we restarted the SUBTOPICS podcast this past week. So those are my highs for the day and my lows. What are your highs and lows? Comment them down below and let me know. Share with me. DM me. Comment. I would love to hear and chat with you guys about it, about how you're doing, how you're feeling, what's going on in your life. I would love it. It's so awkward recording where I'm recording because I'm recording in a public space in my building. Like this area cannot be like rented out at all or reserved or anything. So sometimes people just walk in or like act like they're gonna walk in but then don't walk in. Like some guy just walked up to the door, saw that I was holding a mic talking to myself in the camera, and then walked out. So anyways, I would love to hear what you guys have going on in your life. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. As I mentioned on the last episode, and if you're here from the first season, you already know, and I stress it all the time, that this podcast is a place to be vulnerable. And how am I supposed to preach that if I don't practice it, right? So I wanted to get on here today and talk about my pregnancy. I put a story up on my Instagram telling you guys to ask me questions about my pregnancy journey, labor, etc., stuff about being a mommy. And while we're definitely going to get to those things in an episode, I'm not having a good day. And so what better place to talk about that and share what's going on a little bit without exposing all my life traumas than the podcast. I might cry, girl, but I guess this is the place for it. Oh my God, we're going to be vulnerable today. We're going to be emotional today. And we're going to talk about healing. We're going to talk about healing After a breakup, we're going to talk about healing and working on yourself throughout different trials and tribulations in your life regarding interpersonal relationships. God, I'm literally crying already. Can you tell I'm having a bad day? Oh my God. So I talked about it in my last episode, and I talked about it a little bit in my last episode, but I had a whole episode in my first season about balancing relationships when you're in a relationship. Basically, how to have a healthy balance of everything going on in your life. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the importance of remembering who you are as a person, balancing that with everything else you have going on in your life, your romantic relationships, your kids, your work, your self-care. Like, I'm going to talk about that. And the reason that it makes me emotional is because I have the tendency that whenever I get into a relationship, I feel like I really place a lot of the responsibility of my emotions and making me feel good or making me feel bad or whatever the case may be on my partner. I'm so guilty of that. And I swore up and down when I got out of my previous relationship that I was no longer going to do that in future relationships. Well, flash forward, girl, 2 years and here I am, hella guilty. I am the worst. Like, I'm actually the worst at putting myself first in a lot of situations, in a lot of scenarios. And when you bring a child into the mix, as a mom, you feel like guilty putting yourself first. I'm down here in my building, like in my apartment building, recording this podcast, and I feel guilty because I know that my son is going to wake up from his nap, if not now, in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, his dad is upstairs and more than capable of handling our baby while I'm down here recording my podcast. But I feel bad. Why, you may ask? I don't know. Not once this week have I gotten even an hour to leave the apartment and do something for myself. And so it's really hard to convince yourself that it's okay to do that when you're the only one trying to tell yourself that it's okay to do that. When there's so many external factors adding pressure and so many other things that need to be done that you feel like are your responsibility to also balance taking care of yourself and putting yourself first. Let's get off the emotional train for a second. So I wanted to talk about balancing, I guess, the 4 biggest aspects of my life, which is my career, myself, my romantic relationship, and my family. My son, mostly. Being a mommy. A little bit about me. If you don't know me outside of this podcast, if you didn't listen to season 1, if you don't know me on Instagram, whatever the case may be, a little bit about me. My name is Sarena, obviously. I'm 24 years old. I'm originally from Miami, but I moved to New York City, where I currently live, to go to school and complete my undergrad at NYU. I got my bachelor's degree in nursing, and so that's where I'm at now. I graduated college in 2022. And I currently work as a labor and delivery nurse, and I love my job. Outside of working, I also love doing nails. It was how I paid my bills all throughout college, basically. I taught myself how to do acrylics, and then my passion just grew from there. I used to do makeup in high school, and it's something that I'm still very interested in, but not as much as other things like podcasting. Social media, I love recording videos. I love editing. I love writing. I used to write poetry throughout college, and then every once in a while, usually when I'm sad, I will write more poetry. But those are a lot of the things that make me me. I love baking sometimes. I love trying new recipes. Though it gets old because I cook a lot. I cook almost every single day for my family. Then when I'm done making the meals that I have to make, it doesn't leave a lot of energy for making fun things, which I guess is part of this topic, part of balancing, figuring out where to incorporate the things that you like to do around the things that you have to do, right? And that's what we're talking about. But those are the things that make me me. That's who I am. A little bit more about my work so that you guys can kind of gauge what I'm talking about when I talk about all the things that I need to balance, right? Like, what am I really balancing? So, like I said, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. This is my first big girl job, my first professional job. I work 3 to 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 3 weeks out of the month, and then we pick up a fourth day. So we work 12 shifts in total in a month. But I like to pick up overtime. So a lot of weeks I'll work 4 days a week. And we work 8 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. So they're 12-hour shifts at night. And that's the vibe. That's what my job is. It's definitely one of the most difficult specialties of nursing. It is kind of all areas of nursing in one. We do OR nursing, we do critical care, we do ICU, we do pediatrics, we do everything because our patient is ultimately mommy who may or may not have comorbidities outside of pregnancy. And then we also have baby when baby is born that we're constantly monitoring 24/7 and taking care of whenever baby comes out. Sometimes we have C-sections, obviously, so then we are taking care of a pre-op, peri-op, and post-op patient. It is a lot of work and a lot of specialized knowledge that we're required to have. We do get downtime sometimes. Not all the time do we have a patient, but when it's crazy, girl, it's crazy. There's I feel like in labor, there's no in between. It's either dead, boring, not boring, but nothing's going on, or it's super chaotic. We got 2 patients who are running around like chickens with their head cut off, emergency after emergency. It's no in between. So that's my job. Working nights is so rough. It definitely is not for the weak. It requires you to be really flexible in the times that you spend with people, flexible in your sleep schedule. You have to be very easily adjustable to any kind of schedule. Your schedule is constantly changing throughout the week because you're only sleeping through the night 3 to 4 days a week. The rest of the days you're up 12 hours at night and you're sleeping during the day. So your internal clock is really shifting back and forth all the time, and it never really has a chance to just settle in. I think that's going to be one of the hardest parts about going back to work this week is I've been sleeping so good through the night for 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks now, and I'm not ready to be up all night. I'm probably going to fall asleep at work. Let's pray that I don't. I'm taking Alani with me, an energy drink, not spons. But Alani, if you want to sponsor me, I love your energy drinks. They're the only energy drinks that I drink. Another thing about my job is that we make our own schedule, right? So like I said, we work 3 to 4 days a week. We choose the days that we want to work. We have to work weekends, but we get to pick the weekends that we want to work. We don't work every single weekend. And we get to pick what days during the week that we want to work, which makes balancing different areas of my life and still being able to make special events very much attainable and very much gives me the freedom to kind of create somewhat of a schedule for myself outside of work. A little bit about my relationship. So I'm basically just giving you guys a little bit about all the things that I balance, and then we're going to talk about how I balance all those things. So a little bit about my relationship. My man and I have been together for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in May. Our dynamic, He is a full-time student, and he also works on his podcast that he started with one of his best friends. And he also has a work-study job. So he basically has 2 jobs and a full-time student and stay-at-home daddy vibes, because I work full-time, like 40 hours consistently every single week outside of the house. That's essentially our dynamic. I work nights and he's with the baby on the nights that I'm at work. My son sleeps during the night, so there's not much parenting going on while I'm at work. But God forbid anything does happen, he's the one that's responsible for Kai at night. And then I come home, I sleep during the day until like 2-ish, usually on average. If I have plans earlier than that, I'll wake up. And sometimes if I just had a rough night, I'll sleep till about 3. And then I wake up, kind of give myself 10, 15 minutes. And then I get Kai up from his nap. And at 5 o'clock, I cook dinner. And that's my day on a work day, like that I work the night before. Jay usually takes that time once I'm up to edit his clips, his videos. And that's kind of our dynamic. We try to squeeze in dates, not really dates because we take Kai with us most of the time, about once every 2 weeks at least, I feel like, to like go out to eat or just like do something together that is quality time. So we'll watch like movies together. I'm already talking about the balancing part. Let me pause. We're not talking about balancing yet. Okay? The 4th aspect is being a mommy. I got pregnant in 2022 in April, and I gave birth January 2023. Kai is crazy, but we overall got so blessed with his temperament and his behavior and the way he eats. Like, we literally have such an angel, perfect baby that I literally can't have any complaints at all. He started sleeping through the night at around 3 months, and he sleeps in the morning till we wake him up. Sometimes he gets upset and wants to get out of bed, but most of the time he'll wake up and do like his own thing in his crib. He'll play with his stuffed animals, and if he feels like it, he'll literally even go back to sleep. So we get to wake him up in the morning around anywhere between 9 and 10. And he's a sleepy boy. He then takes a 2 to 3 hour nap in the middle of the day. And he loves eating. He eats everything. He eats like a grown man. He loves snacks. He loves water. He loves balls. Like, he's just so crazy. He loves running around, getting into everything. He loves being independent. And that's our boy. So now let's talk about how I balance all of these things, right? How do I balance my job, myself, my relationship, and being a mommy? It's really hard because one thing always gets left behind, right? Like, I feel like there's physically not enough time in the day to focus on all of these things, but they're all so important, and I care so deeply about literally all 4 of those things. All 4 of those things I care about nurturing and pouring love into and making time for, but I feel like I literally have to be a superhuman, and I'm not. I'm barely a shell of a person. It is so hard. And it's taken a lot of therapy, girl, to even figure out how to do somewhat of a balance. I thought being in a relationship, having a business, and going to school was hard. No. It's not. I mean, it is. But this is so much harder. One of the main tips that I think is really important about balancing work, myself, and my relationship especially is I do not think about work when I'm not at work. We have a group chat and it's muted. If I'm not there, I'm not on the clock, don't talk to me. I'm clocked out. I try to plan my schedule around my man. So I look at the days that he has school, that he has his podcast, and I work my schedule around him because mine is a little bit more flexible. I also try to like talk to him about what days I'm working, see if there's any days that he needs me, that he doesn't need me, and try to really make our schedule around what works best for us as a couple, as a family, as a unit. I also try to plan my overtime instead of just picking up at random overtime for extra money. Again, everything is like expected, like everything is scheduled. We know where I'm going to be at this day, this time. So everything can go around that and go based off of that. And we can talk about what we need to talk about based off of a set schedule. It's so important to talk to your partner about your professional life and set the expectations for the week, the month, however, whenever you get your schedule, and really plan around your work schedule and coordinate y'all's lives to incorporate time into what you have available. If you're not intentional about the time that you choose to spend together, what ends up happening, and it's happened to us, is that you end up going weeks without even having a conversation with one another. And that sucks. That really, really, really sucks. So definitely being intentional with the time that you have and really sitting down together and talking to one another about what free time you have, what you have available, so that you're able to make something work where you guys are getting one-on-one quality time. Something that we also try to do is always eat dinner together. Like, I feel like for me, dinner is kind of like a sacred half an hour for us to spend together. It doesn't always happen. We have to be understanding that sometimes things are just crazy. If we're having a bad day, if we're having a rough moment, it's not always possible for us to sit down together and eat the same meal or eat the meal together or order the same food, whatever the case is. But I think definitely making the effort to remember that, hey, this is something that we can do. If we can't do anything else, we can do this. And that's something that's always been really important to me. The one that I'm still working on that I feel like gets left behind the most is really taking care of myself. And I've really, really been trying to do that more often. And it really starts out with things as simple as taking a longer shower, doing an everything shower, as the girlies like to call it, where I wash my hair, exfoliate, shave, watch a show in the shower, and just relax. Like, literally just relax in the bath and feel refreshed and nourished and feel like I'm taking care of my body. Another thing that I really love to do is get my lashes done. And I think living in New York City makes, not just living in New York City, but having a family in New York City makes doing the things that you find enjoyable really difficult, because we're all living paycheck to paycheck, and it's rough to not feel guilty about spending money on things for just you. Like spending money on things that make you feel good, spending money on leisure activities. Like, I think that's probably the number one thing that I feel guilty about, and that's the thing that gets neglected the most. Spending the little money that I do have on things that bring me and only me joy. Like, they're not for anybody else. It doesn't have nothing to do with nobody else. It doesn't affect my son. It doesn't affect my man. Just me. But that money, when it gets spent, affects my son, affects my man. So it's like, again, constantly trying to find this balance of what's okay and what's not okay. One thing that I've tried to start doing to help find that balance is budgeting. Like, having a budget planner, writing down what needs to be paid, how much money I have coming in, how much money is going out, how much is left over, and really seeing where there's room for extra things. I feel like that's been really helpful, and it's allowed me to kind of plan my spending a little bit better and also cut back where we need to, like eating out, like ordering food, not eating out, going to restaurants. We are the worst and order almost every single meal. But budgeting allows you to be better at that. Ding, 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 ding. I guess the biggest takeaway, if you take anything away from this conversation, is that life is hard. Everybody has their own set of hard. Everybody has their own things that are difficult to push through. Everybody has their own things that are difficult for them to remember to do. But it's so important to sit down with yourself, recognize what's important to you, recognize what are the things that you want to accomplish, that you want to do, that you want to be. Write them down. Remember those things. Remind yourself of them. Check in with yourself and see where you're at. How did you feed your body today? Mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And if you can't do that every day, how did you do that this week? I think I'm constantly making excuses for myself. Well, this happened, so I couldn't do this, or I don't have money for this, so I couldn't do this. And it's bullshit. All of it is bullshit. At least once a week, you should be able to pour into all different areas of your life. My father-in-law said something the other day that really stuck with me. And he was talking about checking in on different family members and asking who we had spoken to, who did we need to check into, who did we owe like a hello to, who have we not spoken to in a long time, yada, yada. And he said, if you just pick one family member a week to shoot a text to, you would literally talk to all of your family all the time. And I was like, wow, that applies to so many different areas of your life. If you just sit down with yourself and pick one thing a week that you want to do for, let's say, your top 5 priorities, right? If your priorities are working out, cooking myself a good meal, spending quality time with my son, spending quality time with my partner, and doing something for myself. Do one thing a week for each of those priorities. Over time, it becomes like second nature. I'm really just preaching to myself right now. I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying and getting something from this. I'm talking about how I balance things, and really it's how I need to be balancing things. And remembering that like I hold the power to be who I want to be next week, next month, next year. And that really doesn't depend on anybody else. I'm responsible for the things that I want to balance. I'm responsible for my own emotional equilibrium. I'm responsible for exactly the way I handle situations in my life, the way I handle trials and tribulations in my life, the way I handle my emotions, my frustrations, my fears, my happiness. Like I am and we are all responsible for our own shit. And as difficult as it is to balance the 10 million, thousand, quadrillion things that we have going on in our lives, it's literally up to us to do that. So what I'm going to do and what I want you guys to do, whoever's watching this, let me adjust myself. And I saw this, I think, on TikTok or something. I'm going to think about the person that I want to be in 1 year. What do my hobbies look like? What does my daily routine look like? What does my morning routine look like? What does my night routine look like? What does my work life look like? And think about my ideal Sarena Jade. And then we're going to write down one thing a week that we can do to nourish that goal, that idea of who we want to be. And we may not ever be that person, or we may, but at least we'll have a clear vision in mind of what we're working towards, what that serene yin yang looks like. And then we're just gonna fucking crush it. And then we're just gonna fucking do it. And I don't even know why I allowed myself to get so worked up and so sad over everything going on in my life. These are not sad tears. The beginning was sad tears. These are happy tears. But everything is just so overwhelming. And to feel things so powerful, to feel things so deeply and powerfully that you're just constantly an emotional wreck is literally the most beautiful thing. To be able to feel things so intensely that you cannot help but get emotional. And that's my rant for the day. I said a whole bunch of nothing during this episode, but I feel better. And I guess that's what the podcast is about, is really talking to myself and also hoping that you guys get something out of the mumble jumble that is in my brain. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope that you are going to create an image for who your ideal person is and the things that you want to work on. And if you're having difficulty balancing XYZ in your life, I pray that you get better at balancing everything, and that you grow within yourself and grow within your interpersonal relationships and grow in the skills that you want to become better at. And I just pray for your love and abundance and best quality of life that you could possibly make for yourself. And that's all. I love you guys so much. And if you're still here and you're still listening, thank you so much for tuning into the Subtopics podcast. And I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Love you guys so much. Mwah.